Hello and welcome to this tutorial on using Photoshop to create a book cover. Now I'm doing this video primarily for the scenario set by OCR for the iMedia qualification for the graphics unit. And for those people studying that qualification, you have here a brief that you have to follow, and you have to make your book cover a particular size. So 305mm by 216 in this case. And we got various things we have to do. You know, it's about a book about a mission to the planet Saturn. We got a title to put on there, an author. We need to have it as a science fiction genre, so science fiction type images, and we have a publisher that will need to go on the book cover as well. Now for anyone else just wanting to make their own book cover for any other reason, this tutorial equally applies, so by all means follow along even if you are not doing OCR iMedia. So first thing we need to do is create the background for our book cover. So we're going to go File, top left, and New. And we're going to make sure we've got the sizes set up here. So 305mm, you can just type in there the size and the height. I've set 150 resolution. Now ideally I'd like that to be 300, but if you're not using a particularly powerful computer, that does make a huge file size, which you may not be able to handle on your computer if it's not a decent spec computer. So I've compromised with a slightly lower resolution. So you need to give it you need to give it a title even. So we're going to call it Saturn Explorer. And for OCR, for the iMedia qualification, they like to see you've used different versions. So you need to show version control. So this first one I'm going to call V1, and then when I carry on next time, I'll call it V2, V3, and that will give the evidence I need to show that I've used version control. So I'm going to click OK. So that's given us our background ready to use. Now you probably don't want white, you'll probably want a different colour for your background. It might be purple, it might be black, but probably a darker colour for science fiction. Now when Photoshop opens up, normally you see the gradient tool here. So to switch to the paint bucket, I just right click on the gradient tool and select the paint bucket, and then whatever colour I've got in here will be the colour that fills the screen. So if I want to change that, I can just click in here and choose, purple or a different colour for the book cover. I've just got black, and there you have it. We now have the beginnings of our book cover. We've got the colour we want for the background. Now the next thing we need to do is drag in the images that we've downloaded to start, making our book cover. So I'm going to drag in a picture of Saturn first. There it is, and I'll want to resize it. Now if I want to resize this without squishing it, if I just do this, it will change the aspect ratio. So if I want to keep it the same, I can hold down Shift on the keyboard and then resize my image, and then I can double click when I'm happy. So that gives us our image. We might want to move it around. At the moment you'll notice this little no entry sign come up. If I click on that, it will tell me I need to rasterize the object. Just click OK, and then that will allow me to edit it in lots of different ways. So I can do things like drag my image around now. I've got an image of a spaceship that I've downloaded, so again something very similar. I'm just going to drag it in, and then I'm going to resize it, again holding Shift down and then double click when I'm happy, and then I can move it around to wherever I might want it on my book. Now you'll notice on the far right I'm starting to get different layers. So to manipulate a layer you need to be clicked on it. So I've clicked back on Saturn here. I think I'm going to pop it down there somewhere. Click back on my spaceship, and then I can move that around as well. Now quite often when you've got a background you don't want, you can play with the blending modes. So you can choose a different kind of blending mode to get rid of the background, and it very much depends on what image you're using as to whether it will work or not. But that can be a very quick way of removing a background. So it is worth having a play with these to see if you can find one that works for you. In this case we're not getting the result we want, so we're going to go to a slightly different way of editing. I'm going to use what's called a layer mask. So right down here bottom left you've got something called a layer mask, so I've just clicked on that and it's given me this layer mask here. Now in here I'm going to click on it and press Ctrl I, and that has inverted the layer mask, and as you can see my spaceship has completely disappeared. Now what I can do next is something quite clever. I can click on the paintbrush, and then I can get a slightly bigger brush by using the square arrow keys, and if I click on here, you can see because I've got black selected, it is just giving me the spaceship back without much of the background. Now if I just zoom in nice and close like this, I can flip back to black, back to my brush, and now what I can do is just brush along closer to the spacecraft to start removing that background. Now obviously when you get in nice and close you'll want to use a smaller brush, but the beauty of this technique is it's completely non-destructive. So if I make a mistake, you can see here I'm clipping the edge of the wing, I can just click on that little arrow down there and I can go back over the edge of the wing with white now rather than black, just to bring it back in. And you can get a very accurate cutout here without those horrible jaggy edges you see so often in people's cutout work. So this is non-destructive. I can go over anything I want again using white instead to re-reveal it, and very, very quickly indeed I've basically blended this in and got rid of the starry background. Now you can spend a little bit of time on this to get it completely accurate, but there, with just a few brush strokes, I've done a pretty good job. So that's a nice way of being able to get rid of a background. You make your layer mask, you invert it by making sure you clicked in there and Control-I, and then you can use the paintbrush tool to reveal or hide different images. Now finally, we're going to need text, obviously. So in Photoshop you've got the text here, so that gives us the text. And in here you've got your fonts that you can use. These are all the ones that come preloaded. You can also in Photoshop load extra ones, but there are plenty here. So here I've got a pretty good science fiction font. I can change the size here to whatever I want, and I can change the color for my font. So I'll just go with red so it should stand out, and then I click in here and I can start writing in my title. So there we go, Saturn Explorer. Now it has gone off the edge of the screen, but not to worry, I can use this tool here to bring it back in. I think it's probably a little bit big, so I'm just going to go back to the text tool and I'm going to change the size of that. So you need to make sure you've selected everything, and then you can make that a bit smaller. So probably 48 is going to be better, and then again using the move tool up here I can then move that in to be better placed and a better size. There's lots of other things you can do with your text. You've got various functionality down here, so you can do things like bevel and emboss, so you can make sort of your text stand out. So there you can now see it standing out from the background. You've got so much stuff you can do. Look, you can drag along here, you can soften the edges to make it a little bit more subtle. You can do contours, sky's the limit really. You can do some really nice stuff. So if I just preview it here, there's my original and there's it looking more metallic. I can again play with this just to get it exactly how I want it, and then when I'm happy just leave it as that. Okay, so there you have it. That will get you nicely started on making your book cover. Don't forget you'll also need to do your spine towards the center, and you'll also need back cover as well. But that should give you some of the tools to get you started. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.